PTF back with another one of the most popular guests that we have on these airwaves. Very excited to welcome him back to the Monster Pods / Mini Pods to talk about Forever Young from NBC Sports. It's Randy Moss. Randy, how are things, buddy?
Hi, Pete. You like my studio here? I'm in my
It
car.
looks
I'm in
very
my
high
car,
tech.
obviously. You just have to make do with what you got, right?
You
Okay.
made it look exactly like the interior of a car, which is
It's,
impressive.
am-
That
it's
level of
amazing.
detail.
It took a lot of props to do this, yes.
I was really interested when I asked you early on in this process which horse you wanted to talk about, and you said Forever Young, which I felt like was perhaps tipping the hand that this is a horse that you might have what so many people have been looking for, some speed figure information. I did a little bit of half-baked work and came up with some ideas. I'm not even going to bother you with that because I have a feeling you're going to have some knowledge about how fast this horse is. We know he's good. We know he's talented. We know he's beaten what they put in front of him. But how fast is Forever Young?
He's pretty fast in relation to the other American 3-year-olds. I mean, other than obviously fierceness in the way he ran in the Florida Derby. I mean, I think Forever Young would stack right up there with Sierra Leone and all that. We don't. Clearly, obviously, we don't publish Beyer Speed Figures for races in Dubai and especially races in Saudi Arabia, but we've got a pretty good idea, a pretty good ballpark of what they would be. In the Saudi Derby, the horse from America, Bookham Dano, around a one-turn mile, ran a hell of a race, and it took Forever Young everything he could muster to run him down. And our estimated figure is about a 101. It was right in line with what Senor Buscador and those horses ran in the Saudi Cup. I think Senor Buscador ran in there. Anyway, I think he did. But
He did. That was his big win.
yeah, but then we come back in the Dubai in the UAE Derby, and he got an estimated figure of a 96, but you have to put an asterisk by that because he was 4 wide around both turns. So really, I'm looking at both of those races as being probably in the 102 to 103 range, which puts him clearly with those kind of performances back again at Churchill Downs, puts him right in the mix.
Very interesting. One narrative about this horse, and I don't know how seriously to take it, but I did think it was interesting in the post race interview when you had the trainer talking about the hood that he wore, which didn't have cup blinkers or anything along those lines. It was apparently just to protect him from Kickback. Coupling that with the way they chose to ride him there, sort of untraditionally for over there with no cover, it did make me worry that they think Kickback could be an issue for that horse. That wouldn't be to his favor at a race like the Kentucky Derby, but is that something we need to be worrying about with a horse like Forever Young, or will that be covered in the price that he's going to be on the day, do you think?
Yes, you should be worried about it. I think there are two primary causes for concern here in no particular order. That would be number one, and I don't really understand why the obsession with Kickback, because I've gone and I've watched all of this horse's races in Japan, and there were a couple of those races early in his career where he took a substantial amount of Kickback over there and won anyway. Now, some of the Japanese have explained that Kickback there tends to be a little softer than Kickback in the Middle East and Kickback in the United States. But if they're going to continue to be so obsessed with Kickback that they put a hood on his face with no blinkers because they think it will cushion the blow of the Kickback, I've never heard that before. But clearly, to get him out of the Kickback in the Kentucky Derby is going to require, in a 20-horse field, the sort of a wide trip that would pretty much doom him if they sort of take that same approach. The other thing to worry about is that after the Dubai World Cup, the same trainer who's had a lot of success in America, by the way, he was the trainer of Love's Only You and the March Lorraine, the long shot Breeders' Cup Distaff winner. So he knows what he's doing. He was quoted as saying after the UAE Derby that Forever Young did not travel well from Japan to Saudi Arabia. And therefore, he believed that the horse was not quite as well prepared for the Saudi Derby as he was for the UAE Derby. Now, that was roughly a 5,000-mile trip from Japan to Saudi Arabia. To get from Dubai to the United States required a flight to Brussels, then a short layover, then a flight from Brussels to Chicago, then a 42-hour quarantine in Chicago, and then a roughly 6 to 7 hour van ride from Chicago to Louisville, roughly a 7,000-mile trip. That is considerably more difficult travel than he experienced going from Tokyo to Saudi Arabia. And if that bothered him, then that, I think, could be a cause for concern as well for this horse in the Derby.
Perhaps it's a case for the believers of in Yoshito Yahagi we trust. It is a little bit tricky to know what to do with him at this point. Let me ask you this. What's your guess, and this is a tough one, on what price this horse is going to be on the day? Or does it a little bit all depend on what happens the very week he gets here and the narratives and the stories that we're going to hear at that point?
Yeah, well, obviously the narratives and the stories will have something to do with his price, but I put him generally in the 8, 9, 10 to 1 category. I've already made a line for the race, an early line for the race, and I had Fierceness is a 5 to 2 favorite with Sierra Leone second choice at about 7 to 2, and then you go up to Forever Young, right? And then you go from there to Just a Touch, probably 10, 11, 12 to 1, and then you go up and so on from there. So I think he's going to be a decent price, and some of those concerns will obviously be baked into that price. We've seen how the Japanese have dominated internationally. It's probably just a matter of time before they win a Kentucky Derby now that they're actively pursuing it. Whether this is going to be the horse or not, I don't know. But I mean, this horse is 5 for 5. He's done it on 5 different racetracks. He's done it from way off the pace. He's done it from close to the pace. He's done it with inside trips. He's done it with wide trips. He's done it with travel. So there's a lot to like. Despite the concerns, there's a lot to like about Forever Young.
Do you see him as an A-level contender? I guess that's the key question at the end of the day.
Yes, I do. I consider 4 horses right now to be A-level contenders. Those 4 that I mentioned: Fierceness, Sierra Leone, Just a Touch, and Forever Young. And you're also going to hear a lot about the record of UAE Derby horses in the Kentucky Derby, which is 0 for 19. And I think you need to take that with a colossal grain of salt for a couple of reasons. Number one, the average price, the average odds of those horses has been 23.5 to 1. If you think back on it, in all the time that Sheikh Mohammed and others have been bringing horses from Dubai to the Kentucky Derby, really only 4 of them came into Louisville with any credentials and any kind of shot at all in hindsight at handling the 1.25 miles. A lot of them were milers, sprinter miler types. Maybe the best they brought over was a horse named Street Cry, who didn't make the race because he suffered an ankle injury a week out. The 3 others were Mendelssohn, who had never experienced Kickback, and he was bumped at the start of the Kentucky Derby on a very sloppy track, and not only got Kickback, he got walls of mud in his face, didn't like it at all, and ran last. Then there was Thunder Snow, who turned into a bucking bronc on a sloppy track as soon as the gates opened. I've seen 100,000 races in my life. I've never seen that before or since. So throw him out, and he wound up winning back-to-back runnings of the Dubai World Cup and $16 million on the track. So Thunder Snow is clearly a very good horse. And then the other one was Derma Sotogake, who really, I mean, he didn't get off to a great start last year, but it was a race that favored horses that came from well back, witness Mage, because of the fast pace. So I don't really give Derma Sotogake that much of an excuse. So really, out of that 0 for 19, Pete, I consider it to be 0 for 1.
Right.
Really, only one horse had a legitimate chance to win the way the race was run and didn't. And it's not like Derma Sotogake ran poorly. I mean, he finished 6th in there, made a little run around the turn. So I don't pay much attention to the 0 for 19 in the UAE Derby.
These mini pods are brought to you by Free Reign Coffee Company. They've been powering the In the Money team throughout the Triple Crown prep season, and the coffee is fantastic. Whether you're looking for whole beans, grounds, or pods, Free Rein give you what you need to get up and get after it. And they've got subscriptions available too, so you never run out. Use our promo code MONEY20 for a 20% discount site-wide over at freereigncoffee.com. $4 million. That's how much original ITM Plus subscribers and contributors have won at the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge over the last 5 years. ITM Plus is the place for our best Kentucky Derby information, including grid picks from the team, trip notes, and specific betting advice. Sign up today at inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. One more question for you, Randy, but first I do want to put out a call to the viewers and the listeners. Go to our YouTube page, drop a comment in there. Looking to keep these conversations going. And this is one of the videos I think we can get the most lively conversation about Forever Young, because I think there's a lot to be said, and especially if we have fans who might have some speed figure information about the races he's been running in other corners of the world, back home in Japan. We'd love to hear from you in the comments, your thoughts on Forever Young or whoever you think is going to win this year's Kentucky Derby. My last question for you is a speed figure one, Randy, and it really has to do with this year's race favorite, Fierceness. I've said this on 6 of these videos already, but I'll say it one more time. If it was a regular race with the speed figure advantage that Fierceness holds, he would be a much shorter price than the bettable favorite price I believe we're going to get on him under the Twin Spires on the first Saturday in May. Are you enough of a speed figure believer that you think Fierceness might represent value at the likely price he's going to be? Or is this a case where you might pay to take the big speed figures with a grain of salt? Where do you stand on Fierceness?
Where I stand, Pete, if all the horses in the Kentucky Derby run their best race, Fierceness wins by daylight, right? I think that even the competition in the race, I think would give you that. There was nothing fluky about his race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, nothing fluky about his win in the Florida Derby. I think a lot of people are saying, well, he's not going to get the same kind of trip as he got in the Florida Derby. He controlled the pace. The fractions weren't all that fast. Yeah, but this is not a one-dimensional front runner. He showed that in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile when he set just off of one of the Chad Brown horses in there and then just blew the field away. And he beat Muth by 5 lengths, and look at what Muth has come back to do since then. So no, I think 5-2 does represent a nice price for a horse with the talent advantage that Fierceness has. If he gets slammed at the start, can he overcome it? I don't know. He didn't in the Champagne. He didn't in the Holy Bull. But tell me any horse in that field who's going to get slammed at the start, who is probably going to go on and run his normal race. It's not just Fierceness. And I think the template here, and we'll be talking about this on NBC, the template for Fierceness with the same rider is the authentic trip from an outside post in the 2020 COVID Kentucky Derby. Johnny Velasquez sort of meted out his speed just a little bit at a time, didn't have to send him, gradually got over from an outside post and was in a great position by the first turn. And whether it's in front or whether it's just off the pace, I think that's what they'll be looking to do, obviously, in the Kentucky Derby, although we don't know what post he's going to get. If he draws an inside post, I might be a little less bullish on Fierceness, but obviously at this point, we don't know what draw he's going to get.
Great overview of Forever Young. Great overview of the race. We'll have you back on much closer to the time where we'll give the full details of all the NBC coverage, the must-watch NBC coverage that week in Derby, and look forward to talking to you and perhaps our other pal if we can bring him back on to make fun of my shirt and give us a few bits of advice too.
You're talking about Super Jog. We'll have him on. He'll be with me next week.
Great stuff, Randy. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye.